Why is it not working?
नमस्ते आंटी, कैसे हो? और कैसे चल रहा है? सब बढ़िया।
Okay. Hi, Brati. Hello.
Hi, ma'am.
Hi, Rip. Hello, Vikram
Hello,
sir.
Hello, G.
ma'am.
How are you
Hello.
doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Great, great, great.
Chalo, good.
Okay, so we're waiting for few more people to join in, and
जरूरत नहीं है.
yeah, in few minutes. Okay. So are you guys excited?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I could see so many messages coming over and over. Ma'am, please tell us.
Hello, ma'am.
Great, great. Hi.
Queen.
Okay, it looks a few people have already joined in. Okay, so it's lovely seeing students here. Great to see you all. Okay, if you are still joining in, we'll wait for another 2 minutes. Okay, so we are beginning now. Okay, still joining. I'm so happy to see Rachna ma'am, Vagmita ma'am. Welcome. Hi, Kavin. Hello, Tasif. Good to see you. Hi, Tarun sir. Yeah, hi. So we have people from various cities like Delhi, Meerut. We have from Bangalore even. Lovely. We have Kavin from Tamil Nadu. Okay, so we need to keep a track that we have to speak in English only. Jaipur. Wow, lovely. All right. Till people are joining in. Great. Let's begin for now. I will keep adding people as soon as they'll come. Okay, so very lovely good evening to all of you here. I'm Amanjot Kaur, I'm the host of the session. I'm from Stimulus, and I would like to introduce what is Stimulus exactly. So, Stimulus is a recreational platform where we think, we create, we write, we speak, we learn, we try, we retry, and we design, we create, we recreate, we do lot many things, n number of things. So today we are here to look at our past with you, sir. We welcome you. My heartiest greetings to you. And the guest is amidst us. And so the sequence for the evening today is the introduction for the speaker, and we're going to have an interaction between some certain questions which I'm going to ask sir, and then we'll have a question answer round with students and Vikram sir. All right, and so it appears it's all set, and we can sail on the boat with you, sir. Yeah,
Sure,
great.
sure, sure.
All right. So Vikramjit Singh Rupra is an IT expert, a heritage activist, an educator, an author, a life coach, a TEDx speaker, and how can we miss his childhood career? He is also a programmer. A very startling fact is that he started his career as a software engineer in his childhood at the age of 13. If I'm not wrong, sir, right?
Yeah.
All right. So he worked in digital agencies like Coke, Nestle, Airtel, Microsoft, Samsung, and many more. It's a long list. And while working, he did his graduation and post graduation in computer applications. In 2009, he started exploring Delhi, especially the heritage, the monuments, and gradually he turned into the heritage activist. He founded the Heritage Photography Club to promote Indian heritage through travel and photography. He officially left digital marketing career in 2015 and became a teacher trainer. He established Heritage Shala, where he has his team set up, who sets up heritage labs in schools and colleges. And he has changed the minds of thousands and thousands. He is an unstoppable man, so he did not stop there only. So he penned his thoughts and he started writing his book. And his first book series titled as Delhi Heritage Top 10 Baulis, where he talks about stepwells of Delhi. And it's a remarkable book. Like I'm dead sure I have read that book. It's such an amazing book. So you can show that book to the people here.
Yeah, sure. That's the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is Bauli's complete package. If you want to know about Baulis, what are Baulis and how do they work, he's going to introduce what are exactly are Baulis. For few, it might be a very new term. they might not know. Maybe they must have seen on the note, on the currency of India, but still they might not know what is a step well. So I want you to highlight a few things about that even.
Will do.
Right, perfect. So we can go on and on for his introduction, guys. He's such a man. Can we see everybody clapping for him? Though we cannot meet physically, but still, like, I'm so glad to see you here, sir. I'm so happy. Okay, so let's begin with the talk show today. Uh, my first question to you is that as you have always been an IT geek, a digital marketing head, so how did you build your interest into history?
See, as far as interest is concerned, interest was always there because since I was a kid, the discussion at home was always around the history or heritage. And in evening, the tea time discussion was between me and my dad would be somewhere around, some topic of history. So even now, what happens is when I go and sit with him, he would uh, he would have read something a day before or that day in the evening, and I would have read something. So we would sit and discuss that this is how it happened, or this is so. Discussions around history have been there since I can remember. So interest was always there. Thanks to my dad.
Okay, right. So it comes from family. Basically,
Yeah.
like charity begins at home. So that's what. Lovely. Okay, let's move to the second question. But then, okay, but I still have another question. Like, you have been a digital expert, right? So you have read a lot of things, or you have listened stories from your dad, or maybe in school. So it was always there since childhood, like you said. So what was that incident which actually changed in 2009 and which led you to this uh, field of becoming like a historian?
So in 2009, I remember it was October 2009, and I visited Mehroli Archaeological Park along with some other monuments in Saket. So in this area, people know about Qutub Minar, and that's what I also knew. Qutub Minar, Mehroli ke andar, we have won this tallest minaret, blah blah blah. But then there are about more than 70 monuments behind Qutub Minar, and there's a huge park, very big park. In that park, you have more than 70 monuments. So instead of going to Qutub Minar, I went to that park, and I was mesmerized. I was actually in shock to see all those structures. And when I asked people what these structures are, something about their history, nobody had a clue. And then I asked them that these places are so dirty and there is no board, no information. So people were telling me that government does nothing. They just come. Uh, uh, do the paperwork, they go away, even in the name of corporate social responsibility, CSR. Companies come, they hold a broom, they just clean it up a little bit, hold their banner, take a picture, and go away. Nobody's doing anything. So I thought that, okay, maybe I can also stand there and crib like them and say, okay, nobody's doing anything, nobody's doing anything. Or I can lead with an example. I can do something and show that you don't need some minister or some MLA or some CEO to come and promote or clean a monument. People who are living around it have their first responsibility. So instead of corporate social responsibility, where companies have to come and maintain something, I said, why not individual social responsibility? I am also responsible. I can clean the place around me. I can know more about the place around me. So I started studying about them, and then I started promoting them.
Wow, that's lovely. Like, so it's you who started yourself. It was not an external push, basically. It was from within.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's lovely. Great. So as we have many students here, so we would like to know what's the real purpose of studying history? Because I've seen students coming up and cribbing the same way, like, ma'am, history is a very boring subject. Like, we do not like studying it. So what do you think on this?
I think Kevin wants to ask something regarding this.
Okay.
Kevin, is it? He's been raising his hand. Amanjit, you might want to unmute him. Then I'll continue with my answer. If Kevin wants to ask something.
Sure, sure. Yeah, Kavin, you're unmuted now. You can ask.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir, I'm having a something like you told that ma'am told that you went to the software company at the age of 13.
Sorry, I didn't get it.
He's saying that, like I mentioned in your introduction that you had a lot of interest at the age of 13 in programming. So his question is related to that. Yes, Kavin?
Okay.
Age of 13 or 30?
Mm-hmm.
So I'll tell you exactly what happened. Is that your question? How did I develop my interest in that? Okay. So what happened was when I was born, my father gifted me a device which is called ZX Spectrum. It is the predecessor to laptop. Laptops came much later. I was born in 1983. That's when that device was there. And using that device, I started playing with it when I grew up. And when I was in class 6, that's when my father sent me to learn programming properly. So I started learning programming, software development, and by the time I reached class 12, I was an expert and I was able to develop software and sell them. So that's how I got into it. And immediately after that, I easily got a job because I had practical experience. I grew, and Amanjot said that I worked with many agencies. I worked with many agencies, but I was employee of only two. And all these clients, Coke, Airtel, Samsung, and all, they were my clients. So I've done a lot of things for them. But I was working with an agency जहाँ पर वो clients हुआ करते थे. So that's how I got into this thing. Now, talking about Amanjot's question, why should we study history? How many, because I can see there are some students who are still much younger, they are probably not in class 6 also, and that's where formally the subject of history starts. But in case any of you have studied history, how many of you find it very boring? You can raise your hand, I can see your video screen. How many of you find history boring? When someone sits and talks and tells you this happened in year so and so, he came, he died, he killed. Sometimes it doesn't make sense. I can see few raised hands in the participant list also.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it doesn't make sense. And even I feel that why are we torturing each other by these kind of stories when they make no sense? Now, how many of you have heard this story, Thirsty Crow? Thirsty Crow, where a crow goes near this thing, a vessel where there is water, but the water is quite shallow. So crow picks up rocks and throws inside that pot. Water rises and crow drinks and flies away. That's the story.
Yeah.
This story is depicted on a earthen pot that we have found in Lothal in Gujarat, and it is 4,500 years old. It is from Indus Valley civilization, 4,500 years old. That story is depicted on that. Now, only because I'm studying history, I know that part. And that's where I know that the story that we hear is a partial story, because the story that is depicted on that particular vase has one more character in it, and that character is a donkey. So the crow comes, and there is a donkey standing near that pot and crying because donkey cannot put his face inside the pot. So crow says, I also want to drink water. What crow does is crow picks up stones one by one, and those pebbles, when crow is picking a pebble, crow can only pick one pebble at a time. Donkey could have filled his mouth with all the pebbles at once and threw in it, and the water would have come up. Now that also makes me think, when we have to relate someone with stupidity, we often say that you are a donkey, you are a stupid. It's not a good thing to do, so please don't do it. But that has been a trend that I have been seeing, that people often say you are a donkey, you can't think. Maybe people that 5,000 years old ago, the people created this notion which is going on till now. There is another story from Panchtantra where there is a crow sitting on a tree branch, and the crow has a piece of food in its beak. And there is a fox, the clever fox story. There is a fox is also hungry. So what fox does, fox starts praising the crow, and crow gets very happy and starts doing cow cow. So the food falls down, which the fox picks and runs away. this story is also depicted. So the very first comics that we have found is from Lothal, Indus Valley Civilization, 4,500 years old, 2,500 BC. In that story, the crow is holding a fish in its beak. And these days, when we say story, that story, we don't use the word fish. We just use any food. Some food is there.
Yeah.
Coming to slightly modern times, the Mughal kings. You all know Akbar and Humayun. You have heard these names?
Yeah.
You know, Humayun is buried in Delhi. There is a tomb that we have, Humayun's tomb. Do you also know that we need to save water? Water harvesting is a good thing. We should create water recharge pits, do water harvesting to save water, save groundwater. India's oldest water recharging pit is in Humayun's tomb. And Humayun's tomb is built on the banks of Yamuna River. So they had a huge structure with a garden right on the bank of Yamuna, the river, a wide, a very huge river. And still, they are creating a water recharge pit, which is not required. Because those people knew that after 500 years, since every river would, with time, reduce in size or change its course, there is a possibility that this river will go far away, start flowing far away from this place. Then how will this place or these gardens get water? So we need to make sure that the groundwater stays at high level. And that is why, such a long ago, they created a water recharge pit within Humayun's tomb, which is like 450 years from today, 450 years ago. They created that water recharge pit, and today exactly that has happened. Yamuna is half a kilometer away, and that place gets less water than what it should be getting. But due to this water recharge pit, Humayun's tomb and its gardens are still green. Area a little away from that place does not get water, but Humayun's tomb gets water. Just because they did this planning very nicely. So if I can study history and I can see what the people in the past did, how did they do it and why did they do it, maybe I can do a better planning of my present and my future. So that's the whole idea about it. That's why we should study history.
I hope you are well convinced with his answer, right? Yes, you can give a thumbs up if you have.
Perfect.
If not, you can say thumbs down. He'll tell you something more. He has abundance of knowledge for you all, you know. Great, great.
Before we continue, one more thing. I hope everybody is comfortable in English that I'm speaking. Everybody can understand ना? अगर किसी को नहीं समझ आ रहा हो मुझे बता देना. Okay? चलो.
All right. Yeah. So the next question is that how is history different from heritage?
Okay. History is something written in books packed up in libraries. You can read history or you can ignore it, but you cannot ignore heritage, because heritage is your legacy. Heritage is what we are living with. So, you know, when we figured out that there is something called weak eyesight, we developed lenses and through which people can read easily. So these lenses, back in those days, people used to hold that lens in front of their eye and adjust the distance so that they can read properly. Then someone thought that God has given us these ears. Why don't we go hands-free? So we created these. Now we are hands-free. We don't need to hold our lens like this and read. We can just put it, relax. Then we developed contact lenses. You don't even need this much. You just put little lens inside and you are done. So there is a proper journey. There is an evolution. That's heritage. Everything has a story associated to it. How did you reach? What did you do? What steps did you take? So heritage is all about that. Broadly, heritage can be divided into tangible and intangible. Tangible is what you can touch. Intangible is what you cannot touch. Or there is another classification where we divide heritage into three parts: natural, built, and culture. Natural is your plants, your flowers, your animals. All this is your nature, is your natural heritage. Built heritage is your buildings, Red Fort, Taj Mahal, or the temples we have, the old temples, the mosques that we have. This is all built heritage. And then there is cultural heritage, the language we speak, the food we eat, all that is cultural heritage. So when you say history, history is the story behind any one incident. But heritage is a huge thing which covers anything that you can even think of. So that's between history and heritage.
Yeah, with this, like I think of another thing, like how, like, can you tell us some one of the examples of food which is still into existence and was there like thousands of years ago?
Example of
Any food item?
food item. There are
Yeah.
many. Uh, have you ever heard of a place called Rakhi Gadi?
Mhm.
Rakhi Gadi is in Haryana. And in Rakhi Gadi, excavation was done where we found out that during Indus Valley civilization, when the people used to live there for 5,000 years ago, their kitchens, when they found their bedrooms, their toilets, they found everything buried under and they dug it up. Now, interestingly, the kitchens that they found, there was one pot, and people who were living over there, they cooked some item and they left it there, and then they went somewhere else, and that pot with that food item was still there. It got buried, and when archaeologists dug it up, they peeled off everything, whatever residue they could find, and they did chemical analysis on it. The sabzi that was in there was bangan ka bharta.
Oh.
5,000-year-old bangan ka bharta we have found, in which they had a tarka of lasan, which is garlic. I think they found ginger also. They found some other spices. So they actually recreated, our archaeologists, our scientists, they actually recreated the recipe of bangan ka bharta from 4,500, 5,000 years ago. And not just that, we have found these kind of things at many places, at many other sites. Again, now bridging gap, coming back to the Mughal era. From Mughal era, they documented so many things. I'll give you one more very interesting example. Portuguese came to India about, I think roughly it has been 1,000 years. I don't remember the exact date, but it has been quite a long time, 800 or something, when they started moving out, and maybe 400, 500 years ago, they came to India. Over a period of time, at some point in history, they introduced a new item to what was then Goa. It was their main territory, which is now Goa, was under Portuguese control during Mughal era. They introduced something called potato, aloo. Now what happened? The British, they thought that Portuguese have introduced potato in India, and maybe this potato will become very popular here. So we should also bring and sell potato to India. But on the Gujarat, Goa, Bombay side, Portuguese were trading. So British cannot trade there. So they came on the other side, they came to Kolkata. So when they came to Calcutta, Nawab Wajid Ali Shah was the Nawab over there. And what British did, they brought sacks of potato and brought it to Nawab Wajid Ali Shah and told him, this is a very rare delicacy of Europe, and we are going to sell it to Indians, but this is so rare and important, we first want to give it to you. Nawab Wajid Ali Shah took that sack of potato, gave it to his chef, and asked his chef to try out something. So what the chef did, he boiled it, he fried it, he tried a couple of recipes, came back to Nawab Sahab and said, Nawab Sahab, this is such an amazing thing. Anyways, you are out of money, you don't have too much money left, and daily you have to give parties where you are serving so much biryani, in which, the biryani is cooked with a lot of meat. So he said, Nawab Sahab, you don't have that kind of money to serve so much meat every day. Why don't you take meat out of rice and put potato in it, because it with spices, taste is quite close and it's a new delicacy. So what they did, they actually took out all the meat from biryani, from rice, and they added potato aloo to it. That's how it became pulao.
Oh.
Even the samosa that they were eating, in samosa they were filling keema, which is minced meat. They said that now this potato is such an important and rich delicacy, they took out meat, because meat everybody was eating. So it had no importance back then. Potato had importance. They filled potato in samosa. That's how potato got into samosa.
Oh,
It
interesting.
became so popular that everybody wanted to have potato. And that's when British started bringing ships and ships of potatoes to India. They also started cultivating potato in India. Somebody took away, they started cultivating it in India, and that's how potato was Indianized. And now everybody, I mean, I can guarantee in each house, if you go to your kitchen, potato will be there right now.
Right. True.
Exactly. You never run out of potato and onion in your kitchen.
Yeah, you name like vegetable, and we do not cook any vegetable without potato now.
Potato is like potato and paneer can go into anything.
Right. Be it sandwiches or
Exactly. So
paratha.
that's how history is.
Right. Okay. There is Gauri who's raising her hand for long. I'm going to unmute you, Gauri. You can ask your question. Yeah, Gauri.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
So my question is that, so like you have been studying so much of history. So what are your plans in your future as of heritage activities?
See, I want to promote heritage in whatever way possible. And this is something that I cannot do alone. So I have a good team of friends who have been helping me, and I'm so glad to see Tausif Ahmed in the list right now. He has been my backbone in whatever I've been doing from last so many years. I do any session, I do any walk, any event. So I just go there, do the buck talking part and go away. Tausif does all the planning, management, organizing, everything. So with friends like these and help from everybody, all I want to do is to make people aware that history is not boring. History is quite interesting. It's all about how you study and what you study. And if you can study it properly, you will see that there is a pattern. How things have evolved to this stage. If you can study that pattern, you can predict future. So if you want to be ahead of everybody else in the world, all other countries in the world, you need to study your past properly. You need to see what mistakes we have done in the past, and we must not repeat those mistakes.
Gauri, you got your answer? Gauri?
Frames frozen.
Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah, Gauri. So you got your answer?
yes.
Good.
Okay. Yeah, maybe some internet issues. Okay,
Yes,
there is
ma'am.
another. All right, Gauri.
Ma'am, I had one more question.
Okay.
So
Go
my
ahead.
question was, like, what is the daily routine of a heritage activist? That is there something special?
Yes, there is. Uh, Reading, lots and lots of reading, so much that sometimes you get tired, you sleep on your books. And you know, when I read, I don't read from one single book. I open multiple books while I'm reading because I'm not just reading, I'm doing my research. Then you need to talk to your book. I'll tell you how it is done. So I have this old Urdu book with me. I learned Urdu because the information that is in these kind of books is not available in English books. And when I read this book, let me show you a page which I marked. I don't know if you can see or not, but while I'm reading the book, I'm also with pencil writing in the margin. I don't know if it is properly visible.
It's visible, yeah.
So
very
I
light.
go there, I write it alongside, I write my notes, and then whatever is written in this book by one author, I pick another book. This is another book written, this is from 1870, this is from 1910. So 40 years later, what is written 40 years later about the same topic in this book, then I would read here, and then I would compare my notes, and then I have more books in English and Persian which are on the same topic. So to research on one small topic, I'll read multiple books, and that requires a lot of time. So my routine is all study, read books.
Wow, that's a like a pretty amazing daily routine. So like, thank you for answering my questions. I'm relieved. Like I had these questions with me. So thank you.
I have a message for everybody. If you want to be do anything like this, just do one thing. Do not trust anybody. So if I'm reading one author, I don't trust this author. I would say that whatever he has written, maybe he's wrong. Let me verify that. Cross verify everything from 2 or 3 different sources. If you are able to do that, then that thing might be right, and that's how you can proceed.
Thank
So
you.
right. Yeah, so like whenever I teach, so I always tell them to go back and check and read something. You might get something new, which I've not taught them in the same
That's so
way.
true.
So it is what like I hope they must be doing that. Okay, so we have some other questions. We have Satwik who has a question. All right, Satwik, I'm unmuting you.
Yes, mentioned that
Okay,
when the
Prabhu.
Bagan ka bharta was found in the Indus Valley, it was found 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. Why didn't it rot?
It was rotten. It was in rotten state. All we found was simple carbon mixed with mud. But the scientists, they did chemical analysis on it. So they took it, they did all kind of tests. And through tests, they found out that it contains brinjal, it contains bangan, and all other ingredients that it has. That's how they found out that this must be bangan ka bharta. It was rotten.
Thank you.
And not just at one place. We have found food ingredients even from Meerut. Alamgirpur near Meerut is the easternmost settlement. We have found food from there also.
Okay.
But here we have only found rice and millet, which we have found in most of other places. Rice, millet, we have also, I don't remember wheat, but rice for sure. And more interestingly, the rice that we found in Meerut, in Alamgirpur, was not for humans. They were feeding rice only to animals. Humans were not eating rice at that time, what we have found. Because wherever they were keeping their animals, we have found stacks of rice over there for their feeding.
Okay, so was that the same kind of rice what we eat today?
No, the variety was definitely different. Even today in India, we have such a huge range of rice varieties. The basmati that we eat is not that good for health for regular consumption, and that is why people in South India they survive only on rice. I mean, they consume rice on daily basis, but in North India we cannot consume rice on daily basis because we are addicted to basmati. You go to Northeast, you will get black rice. So the variety of rice changes even after every few kilometers. It changes.
Okay. Okay, Radhika, you have a question to ask. Yes, Radhika, I'm unmuting you. You can ask your question.
Good evening, sir,
Good evening, Ji.
and good evening to ma'am also.
Good evening.
Sir, I wanted to ask that India has been ruled by many rulers like the Mauryans and the Mughals, the Britishers, and the Portuguese also. So, and recent and just now you said that the Britishers and the Portuguese they brought potatoes to our country, and
Yeah.
we have also heard that the Britishers helped to develop the hill stations. So, do you think that India would have developed to this extent without being a bonded country?
It would have done much better. Why I say so is because um, the way we were, at least our education system, the way it was so powerful. With coming of British and Industrial Revolution, things did change and go on a different track. Now, if you want to call that as development, it's fine. That is a different kind of development. What we were doing was a totally different kind of development. The kind of medical science that we had was so advanced back then. The culinary science that we had was so advanced. All that was destroyed. Uh, However, the only problem that we had before the British came was that the caste system and there were certain ills in the society that were bothering us too much. But then we also know that there were so many religious and political reforms that have happened where people were trying to fight against these practices. So if there were no British, even then we would have fought against it, and at some point of time we would have come out of it. India would have done much better without the British. I'm super sure about that. So I can do a separate 2-hour session on that, just explaining how it is possible.
Yeah, I'm sure like that must be again a very intriguing session. Okay, so we have few more people. Okay, Radhika, she wants to ask one more question. Yes, Radhika, you can ask.
Uh, uh, Sir, I want to ask that I have seen many people like they are interested in the history of other countries, but not in the history of our own country. So, what is your views about this?
I don't mind if you want to study other countries, but you know what? Unless you know about yourself, there is no point running around and talking to other people, because the moment you go to other country and talk to them about their history, if they ask you one question about your country and you are not aware, that's more like an insult. So at least, and I, whenever I start my class or my session anywhere, I often ask people to tell me the meaning of their name. If you don't even know about yourself, forget about the country.
Correct.
When I asked my father why did he name me Vikramjit, my dad told me that I have been named after Samrat Vikramaditya. So I started reading about Vikramaditya. Now I found so much when I was reading about Vikramaditya, that I even did one TEDx talk only on my name, which is not even the format of TEDx. They don't allow that kind of stuff. But I did it. They allowed it. You search my name on YouTube, you'll get it. The meaning behind beyond the meaning of your name. That's the title of the video. So where I'm just explaining the meaning behind my name. Every one of you would know. You can ask your parents why were you named, and what is the story. One is the meaning of your name, and then the story of your name. What all happened? Indian parents बहुत सोचते हैं नाम रखते वक्त, यही नाम क्यों रखा? Debate करो उनसे. You'll get so many interesting stories. So start studying yourself, your own family, then your city, your state, your country. That's how you move outside. That would be a better approach.
Yeah, well said. Yeah. So Samrid, you also have a question, Samriddha. If I'm speaking wrong, I'm sorry, but I'm unmuting you. You can ask your question. Yeah, Samriddha or Samrid. I cannot hear you, ma'am. You're not audible. Not audible, ma'am.
Voice is very low.
I'm audible.
Yeah, very low, very low.
It's okay. Yeah, 1 minute. Now it's okay.
Little better, but yeah, if you can manage to speak little louder.
Okay, okay. Well, Aman, it's thanks to invite me. And it's a wonderful session. And Mr. Vikramjit, really, I just used to hate history during my classes, my school time. But today, you boost my interest again in history, and it's really hats off to you. You have studied a lot of, and your knowledge and your information, your way of talk. Oh my God, it's awesome. And my name is Nidhi Bhakuni. I'm mother of Samrid. Actually, I have a login.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. Vikramjit, I just want to know one thing, like what I found with your discussion. History is not so boring as we find it, right? But somehow we got it by because the pattern of delivering the history in schools, right? That
Yeah,
is the boring. That
yeah,
is,
you're so right.
and what chapters, what material is provided in school, that is also boring, right? So what would you say, and what should be the method, what should be the delivery for history, because children should have the interest in that field also, because history is not about only the kings. History is about all everything what we have found in a science, what we have done in a maths, what we have in a food, every field what we have done, that is the history of that field. So but we have make it very short, because in a history when we talk about that, we discuss only about the kingdom, not at all. And kingdom, and when we talk about the kingdom, we discuss only who killed, who attacked and who was attacked and where. Nothing else, right? So that is the major reason why we don't have any interest. So what would you suggest to teachers? If you have an opportunity to suggest the teacher, then what would you suggest? What should be the method to deliver the history in classes to create the interest of children in that subject, and what should be the changes in history if we really want our children to introduce our history?
Okay. About 4 years ago in IIM Ahmedabad, I did a session which was where did we go wrong in teaching history. Even that's on YouTube.
Okay.
And since then, I have been a teacher trainer where now I travel across India. I train teachers and I train social science teachers. I tell them how to teach history. That is my full-time job right now. So, in a nutshell, for details, you can watch that video. I've done multiple videos on this topic, 2 TEDx talks and 1 in IIM Ahmedabad. But in a nutshell, our history is no longer, whatever we teach is no longer relevant. History used to be very relevant.
Yes.
Whatever we were teaching, the Panchtantra that we read was not a storybook. Panchtantra, Singhasan Battisi, Betal Pachisi, these were actually textbooks that were used to teach kids about various things. For example, Singhasan Battisi was only taught to the students who were eligible to rule somewhere, because Singhasan Battisi would teach them how to rule. Similarly, all those who were associated with any form of justice were taught Betal Pachisi. Then those, and so for that, all your zamidars or your nayaks, from king to all these people who have to be dealing with some sort of, even the sarpanch and all, any form of justice you have to deal with, you have to study Betal Pachisi for that. And then there are normal people, traders, regular, those who want to get into the Vaishya community, to be more precise, they would study Panchtantra, because these stories teach you stuff that you need in daily life for better life. So our education was story-based, the story pedagogy, and it was highly relevant. But what we have done now is we have changed, we have created all those barriers. Some parts are in the fragments of religion, some parts go into ratification, कि बस रट्टा मार लो क्योंकि हमने बोला याद कर लो. क्यों आए थे, कब आया था वो राजा, क्या करने आया था, doesn't matter. We always say Babur came to India. Babur had no idea what is India. Somebody called him. Who was that guy? He was an Indian. The guy who called Babur. When first Muhammad Ghori came to India, Prithviraj Chauhan actually abducted the daughter of, not even abducted, Sanyukta, daughter of Jaichand, was in love with Prithviraj Chauhan, and when Prithviraj Chauhan came, she ran away with Prithviraj Chauhan. Jaichand was so frustrated, so furious and so angry, he actually invited Muhammad Ghori, giving him all the plans and all the secrets of Prithviraj Chauhan. That's how he was able to defeat, and that took him 2 battles to defeat Prithviraj Chauhan. Otherwise, Muhammad Ghori would have never been able to defeat. That's why we say घर का जयचंद या घर का विभीषण लंका ढाए.
Exactly.
घर के जयचंदों से बचे. जयचंद ने तो बुलाया था घोरी को, और यहाँ पर दौलत खान लोधी ने बाबर को बुलाया था. बाबरनामा, if you read in Babarnama, he is clearly written that I've got letters from Daulat Khan of the Nawab of, or the ruler of Ludhiana, who was under Ibrahim Lodi of Agra or Delhi Sultanate ke andar. He was the governor of Ludhiana in this entire area. He invited Babur to attack on Lodi so that his seat can be saved. But जब बाबर आया तो उसने सबको साफ कर दिया, फिर इसका भी कुछ नहीं बचा. सिमिलरली जब घोरी आया पृथ्वीराज चौहान को मारने के बाद, अगली बैटल में उसने जयचंद को भी मार दिया. Every single king was, or the dynasty ended because someone from inside invited someone from outside.
Right.
Same goes for Tughlaq and Khilji and everybody. So we only study partial history of one side of the coin. If you study it properly, बहुत interesting चीजें निकल के आएंगी, and your perspective will completely change towards history.
राइट, एग्जैक्टली. लेकिन इस तरह से हमारे टीचर्स कभी नहीं सोचते ना, स्कूल्स में कभी इस तरीके से पढ़ाया जाता है.
रिसर्च बहुत करनी पड़ती है ना इसके लिए, क्योंकि एनसीईआरटी की किताब में लिखा नहीं हुआ.
लिखा हुआ नहीं.
अपने आप तक कौन जाके मेहनत करे.
But they are a teacher of history subject, and they have done the PhD in history, but they don't know about anything in history.
It's actually easier to explain because all the students will also agree with me. जब हम एज अ पेरेंट जब हम बच्चों से बात करते हैं, वी टेल देम पहले मैथ अच्छे से कर लो, पहले साइंस अच्छे से कर लो. हिस्ट्री इज, सोशल साइंसेस इज लाइक द बॉटम मोस्ट, easiest, bottommost, and below that comes art and craft. Art and craft should be on top. All the kids, you enjoy art and craft? You can raise your hand or thumbs up. Nobody enjoys. If you enjoy, if you don't enjoy art and craft.
Do you like art and craft?
But do you enjoy traveling? Do you enjoy
Yeah.
going to places?
Yes, yes.
So if you enjoy traveling, when you go to some place, every place has some story to tell. Isn't that history?
Exactly, exactly. Exactly. विक्रमजीत, आपको क्या लगता है कि किस तरह के टॉपिक्स हमारी हिस्ट्री में हमारे स्कूल्स में होने चाहिए बेसिकली?
जैसे हैं बहुत अच्छे हैं, टीचर चेंज कर दो। टॉपिक्स बहुत अच्छे हैं, टीचरों को थोड़ा सा ठीक कर लीजिए।
We have students with us. They might.
Really, it's superb. Thank you. Thanks.
All right. So we have Mahi who has a question. So Mahi, you can ask your question.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
So I wanted to ask, which phase of history do you like the most?
Okay, that's a tricky question. I often get a question, which monument you like the most? That's the first one for me. Which phase of history? There is no phase that I would say is good or bad. Every phase has taught us something. So if you are studying history just to learn something new, every topic is a new and interesting thing. So there is no phase. However, I would still, if I still have to do a rating, the period of Ashoka was amazing. The kind of construction that has happened, the kind of development that has happened during that period. And right after Ashoka, the kind of development that has happened with the later kings, we call it the Kushan era and all. So I love that entire era.
You got your answer, Mahi? Okay, so she's again mute.
Okay, who's next?
Mahi, do you have another question?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to ask, what led to the drain of the economy in the last phase of Mughal Empire?
One was the miscalculations of Shah Jahan, because he had so much money, he couldn't even manage it. According to British records, when the East India Company was established, that was in 1600, 31st December 1600, East India Company was formed in London. And at that time, Akbar was the Emperor of India when East India Company was formed. And the interesting thing is that they did a calculation. They said that the total tax collected by Akbar every year in pounds was 17 million pounds. So Akbar was collecting 17 million pounds as tax every year. At that time, in that year, Britain's total worth was 16.5 million pounds. So Britain के पास total जितना सब कुछ मिला के जितना पैसा, जमीन, जेवरात जब जितना है, उससे ज्यादा हम हर साल तो टैक्स कलेक्ट कर रहे हैं. So आप अंदाजा लगा सकते हो how rich India was. Obviously they wanted to come to India. So they came, by the time they came 1612, Thomas Roe comes to India. That's when Jahangir is emperor. And Jahangir does a treaty with them. After that, Shah Jahan is given all that money, all that wealth. He spent so much money. The cost of Taj Mahal was so much. And then by the time Taj Mahal was completed, he was completely out of money because the cost of entire Taj Mahal was less than the cost of the seat that he was sitting on. The Peacock Throne, the Takht-e Taus, Peacock Throne was so expensive that even the Taj Mahal cost was less than that. And he spent all his money in buildings, these kind of stuff. This, in history I've read that when Taj Mahal was completed, there was a scaffolding of bricks around it. Shah Jahan was not left with any money. He couldn't even take out those bricks. So actually Taj Mahal was hiding behind a huge wall of bricks. So then Shah Jahan announced that everybody living in that area can come, take a brick as a souvenir. People just rushed to that place. They removed all the bricks. They took each brick to their home as a gift, as a souvenir. That's how Taj Mahal was actually revealed. Shah Jahan had no money to even unveil Taj Mahal. And that's when Aurangzeb comes in. Aurangzeb brings back the economy. But immediately after his death, his sons start fighting. And in order to fight amongst each other, they spent all the money that they had. And that's where, if you see the Mughal graph, during Ashoka, India was on top of world economy. During Akbar, we were still number one. During Aurangzeb, we came to number two. After that, we dropped so badly that we were not even top 20 in next 50, 60 years. So that's how the economy went away. I can see a lot of questions now. I'll
Yeah.
keep my answer short now. Okay. I've been taking too much time.
So we have few more people here. Okay, Kavin, you have another question? Yeah. Pragati, you also have a question. Okay, I'll unmute Pragati first of all.
Yeah.
Yes, Pragati.
Good evening, sir.
Good
Sir,
evening.
like you are a heritage activist, so there might be some drawbacks for your job also. I should not
Yeah.
say job, but so what are those drawbacks?
मेरे पे गोलियां चल चुकी हैं, मेरे पीछे लोग पड़ चुके हैं, जहां से मुझे ऐसे से भागना पड़ा है. There are certain areas in India where I cannot go because if they find me, they will beat me up. Why? Because they were trying to destroy a monument. I did campaigns. I saved those monuments. Then there was one time where in Mewat, I went inside, deep inside a jungle, and there was a fort. I was looking for that fort, but mining mafia had taken over that area, and sand mining was happening over there. And they would never allow someone, and I was holding a camera. I just went there. So they did some firing in air to make me run away. They could have easily shot me also. I actually ran. I ran like anything. I haven't ran that fast in my life ever before or after that. That was the only day I ran like crazy person. So all that has happened. Yes, there are drawbacks. And when you go and you try it, you see that someone is trying to deface a monument or harm a structure. You try to tell them don't do it. They would fight with you. They would beat you up. All that happens. So these are the drawbacks.
So you're telling them that it's not an easy job.
It's not. No job is easy. Everywhere you have to do hard work.
Correct. So true. Okay, so you got your answer, Pragati? All right. So, Prabhu, do you have another question? Okay, there's Radhika. She's saying that who told the secrets of Prithviraj Chauhan to Gauri?
Jaichand. Jaichand was Raja of Kannauj, and Delhi was under. So it's a very long story. I'll just cut it short. Jaichand was controlling Delhi way before that, or Jaichand's forefathers. That's how one of the forefathers of Jaichand was called Raja Dhillu. That's how Delhi gets its name. It's named after the Raja of Kannauj. Raja Dhillu se Delhi ka bana, Delhi ka se Delhi, Delhi se Delhi. But when Prithviraj Chauhan came, he took over Delhi. So anyways, their families were anti each other. There were many other issues between these two families, the family of Ajmer and the family of Kannauj. And though they were relatives also. Ultimately, what happened when daughter of Jaichand fell in love with Prithviraj Chauhan, things changed at a completely different level. Jaichand forcefully tried to do the Swayamvar of Sanyukta. But what she did, she came out of the palace and Jaichand had a statue of Prithviraj Chauhan outside his palace saying that he is my Darban, my gatekeeper. And when she had to put the Varmala in one of the king's neck, instead of putting in any of those, she came out and she actually put the garland in the statue's neck. Prithviraj Chauhan's statue, which was standing outside. That's when Prithviraj Chauhan goes and picks her up and brings her to Delhi. And then Jaichand gets so angry, he cannot attack Prithviraj Chauhan because Chauhan is superior in armed power. So he informs Gauri.
So casteism has always been there on the edge. Like we have been fighting today also, and it was many years ago also.
Yes.
So that's one of the reasons why we are in different regions. And okay, so Kavin, I'm unmuting you again.
Hi, sir.
Yes, Kevin.
Coins, inscriptions, have written documents, sources like pots and skeletons. How can you say that it depends to that time?
There is something called carbon dating.
Okay.
So every object, because human beings, animals, everything is made of carbon or has some element of carbon. And carbon along with time changes. So the carbon dating is a scientific method. In Delhi, in IIT Delhi, we have a lab where we can get anything tested. So they would put that object there. They would put some chemical, and whatever bands come in there, they would read them and they would tell these many years ago this object was created or formed. So carbon dating is done.
So
Sorry.
I'm having another questions. They will say that the time which we don't, we will call it as circa, sir. But in that we can't do the method carbon dating.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear it properly.
No, some sources which we don't know which time it belongs to, they will say that they will call it as circa.
Yeah. No, circa is not when we don't know it. Circa simply means around. So we say circa 300 ago. Around 300 years ago. Because even with carbon dating, you cannot give the exact date. There is always a margin, which is like, in some cases, it could be just 10 years, 20 years. In some cases, it can be 100 years also. So 400-year-old or 500-year-old, anywhere between that. So that's when we say circa 300 BC. Somewhere around that time. That's what we do.
Thank you for clearing my doubts.
Okay.
Okay,
So
I think Ishnur also has a question.
Yeah.
She asked how we can study history in class easily, as I feel very boring, sir. Please suggest me something. Ishnur, you are in which class? Can you unmute Ishnur? I think this is more relevant question for everybody, so I'm just picking this one up.
Yes, Ishnur, you can ask your question.
So you are in which class?
7.
7. Okay. So Indus Valley is already gone. और आप बहुत बोर हो चुके होंगे उसमें, I can understand. See, anybody, whichever chapter in history you want to study, the best thing to do is pick up your textbook, see what topics are covered in there, go to YouTube, go to Wikipedia, go to different places and search that topic over there, because there are so many people who have made interesting videos around those topics. So kings and queens, if you're right now studying the Mughal India or the Sultanate period, you can read about them on different blogs and not from your textbook, not purely from your textbook, because there are so many, in certain cases there are even cartoons available which teach the same topic in such a different way, interesting way. So try doing some research on your own. That will help you.
Okay. So Neil, you have a question here. Neil, you can ask your question. Yeah.
How India's name came?
The oldest reference that we have is called Jambu Dweep. Jambu Dweep is the oldest name that we hear of India from some old documents, and then it kept on changing. There was a time when India, or the southern India, the South Asian subcontinent, which is the Indian subcontinent, which includes countries like Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Myanmar. This entire belt was known as Nabhi Varsh. After Nabhi Varsh, we have Bharatvarsh. After Bharatvarsh, name kept changing over time of different regions, but then Bharat became one name. As per Jain tradition, Raja Nabhi's son was the first Tirthankar in Jain community, and his son was Raja Bharat. So Raja Bharat se we became Bharat या Bharatvarsh, और नाभि वर्ष भी उन्हीं के नाम पर ही था. So उनके tradition में ऐसे आता है. India, the word comes from the Roman style of writing, where for Sindhu Nadi they use the word Indus. So anything beyond Indus or Indi was India. Similarly, when we say Hindosita, Hind or Sindh are two separate words. So the Persians used to call the Sindh river or the Indus river as Sindhu, and beyond Sindh is Hind. So Hind Sindh ये चलता था, तो वहां से Hind word आता है. And Afghans used to, especially Nadir Shah, or I think it was Ahmad Shah Abdali, one of these guys, they used to call it Hindostan. So Hind is different, Hindostan is different. because in Persian, Hindo means stealing, chori. जहाँ से चोरी की जा सके, जहाँ से लूटा जा सके. So that's why they started calling it Hindostan. It is Hindustan is different thing. Hindostan is different thing. So Hindostan word comes from Afghani style Dari Persian, and Hind comes from the Iran side of Persian. That's how we got our name.
Another question.
Sorry, yeah. Sure.
And why other countries were coming to rule India?
Everybody wanted to rule India because India was wealthy, and we wanted to rule others. That has always happened. Every country attacked each other. The boundary of India that you see right now was made by the British. We were never like this. We were different boundaries. So in class 6, 7, one would study the Mahajanpadas. Ashoka was ruling over a kingdom which is Magad. Now Magad is Bihar. Capital is Patna. And when he expanded up till Afghanistan, which is this place, Kamboj. There was a separate kingdom, a different country altogether, Kamboj. But he expanded and he made it one country. But in that case, he never added South India to it. So Tamil Nadu, Kerala was not part of India during Ashoka's time. And they didn't become part of India till the British came. They were separate kingdoms. Travancore, Cochin, these were kingdoms. Hyderabad was a separate kingdom. So the map of India was totally different. Rajputana was small kingdoms. They were fighting with each other all the time. Eventually, after independence, we combined them. We made Rajasthan out of it. So history is not as simple as it appears when we read it.
Right. It's very simplified version of history what we are reading in the books these days.
I have a question.
Okay.
Sir, I have a question.
Okay.
In Bangalore, where did Vijayanagar's treasure went?
Vijayanagar treasure, these treasure stories are so interesting. Everywhere we get to hear there was so much treasure, the kings, the later kings, they spent everything. It's not buried anywhere. If it was buried, we would have found it. Even if it is buried and we have not found it, maybe one day we will find it. So if I knew where the treasure went, I would have brought it back. But unfortunately, it was spent by later kings, and now it cannot be recovered.
But everybody is saying it is in Kerala.
Sir, everybody is saying it is in Kerala.
Padmanabhan Swami temple, the two doors that are not open. Yes, I have also heard that story, but there is no one who can verify. And no matter how big those rooms are, they cannot contain that much gold to quench the thirst of entire country. Like I said, that if these two doors open, the entire country will go debt free. That's quite difficult.
Sir, and how did Kannada word come?
Kannada? As far as I have read, Kannada word has been existing because of the language of some local tribes. That's what I know. I haven't researched too much about that part of the country till now.
Yeah,
I think that's where the Kannada comes from.
No, they were telling like 2000 years old.
There is a possibility. It is possible. We can't deny that because people 2000 years ago, this entire belt right from Sangam village of Tamil Nadu to the upper part, research was happening. Vedas were already there, and the South Indian literature was already in place. So definitely the word was there.
Thank you, sir.
Amujot, maybe we can take one hour question more.
Yes, I know. We are running short of time now. So Prabodh is asking a question. He's raising his hand for so long. I'll just unmute him.
Sure.
Yeah, Prabodh.
Are the facts shown in the movie true?
Mostly no. I'll tell you a very interesting story. I don't know. I'm sure you must have not seen that, but your parents would have seen that movie, Mughal-e-Azam. So if your parents are around, you can ask them. Have you seen the movie Mughal-e-Azam? In Mughal-e-Azam, when they were announcing the emperor coming to the hall, they would say Ba Adab, Ba Mulaiza, Hoshiar. Now this, the one of the cast members or the crew members of Mughal-e-Azam, I heard his interview. He said that there is no evidence that Mughal court ever used this style of announcing the emperor. They must be having a different style. But since in the movie they wanted to do something fancy, they created this line. So Ba Adab, Ba Mulaiza, Hoshiar, Sultanate, Hindustan, this and that, and the Badshah Salamat, Jalwa Farosh ho rahe hain. This style of announcing was actually created by the cast of Mughal-e-Azam movie few years ago. It was never there when the Mughals were here. Also, how many of you have seen movies like Padmavati and all? You must have seen.
Yeah.
You know, in all the movies, the kings, the queens, they are dancing. Do you think Khilji would have been holding his sword and dancing like this with all his soldiers in such a choreographed manner? Is it even possible? Then I haven't seen these movies, but there was this one scene of Baji Rao that I have seen where Baji Rao was sitting in a very lavish palace. I don't know how many of you have been to Pune. In Pune, Shaniwar Wada, which was his palace, if you go inside, it's a very small wooden structure with a brick stone wall around it. Inside the palace is very small and humble. There is nothing of that sort. I'm surprised. Pune is about 2 hours drive from Mumbai. The director from Mumbai couldn't catch a cab and come to Pune and see how the actual palace looks. But no, they wanted to create something so big, so fancy that they just changed everything. That I'm talking about Bajirao Mastani.
I have one more doubt. Did Shah Jahan also plan to make the Black Taj Mahal?
No. There are 4 Taj Mahals in Agra, and none of these are actually called Taj Mahal, the original name when Mughals were here. So the white building that we now call Taj Mahal was originally called Rawza-e-Munawwar, the illuminated tomb. And Rawza-e-Munawwar is how, because Aurangzeb was governor of Agra and he wrote letters to his father in Delhi. So in all those letters, he has mentioned the building as Rawza-e-Munawwar and not as Taj Mahal. After Aurangzeb, the building became popular as Taj Mahal. Locals started calling it Taj Mahal. Behind, on the other side of Yamuna, there is a garden called Mehtab Bagh, where he has a large water tank. And in that Mehtab Bagh, in the center, there is a pavilion, there's a platform. If you sit on that platform, you will not see Yamuna River. You will see the white Taj Mahal, and the water tank inside Mehtab Bagh will hold a reflection of that Taj Mahal. So from that vantage point, there is a white Taj Mahal and a black Taj Mahal. So Taj Mahal appears in reverse also with a complete image. That's why Mehtab Bagh became popular as the Black Taj. Similarly, we have a baby Taj, which is Izmaduddaulah ka Maqbara, and a red Taj, which is Hastings tomb. So we have 4 Taj Mahals in Agra.
Thank you.
That's new. Yeah. Okay, so here we move towards the end of the session. And I just have one last question that is like on your book. So you being a successful author of the Delhi Heritage Top 10 Baulis. So I would like you to throw some light on your book, and if you can just show your book again. And
yeah. So the book is about the stepwells or the Baulis. Those who don't know what Baulis are, we would dug up a well to fetch water from underground, and then people realized that well is not convenient for everyone. So what they did, they also created steps to go to the water level and go and sit there. Now Baulis had multiple functionalities. I would recommend that there are many YouTube videos that I have done. 1 or 2 are specifically around the book. The Baulis of Delhi, if you search my name, you will easily find them. And where I've explained the architecture, the orientation, and what all Baulis exist in Delhi, how they function, and how society functioned around them. There was a practice which in villages even today happens, that wherever there is a water body, it could be a Bauli, a well, a tank, a lake, anything. Ladies would use that space in the afternoon and gents would use that space in the evening. And if a gent has to come in the afternoon, he would stand away from that structure, not look towards that side, just cough or make some noise. So if there are ladies bathing or washing, they would know that there is a male presence, and then they can tell the person, no, you wait, don't come forward, or okay, everybody's decent, you can come. So they would take a call then and there. So many things of these sort I found. I also found stuff like you know, next to Yamuna there are so many Baulis. So right next to Yamuna they were constructing wells and Baulis, and similar thing happens on the bank of Ganga also. So that's when I found out that actually Ganga and Yamuna, they have a particular isotope of oxygen which is not very good for human body if it is consumed on daily basis. So that is why Yamuna and Ganga water was sent, or rather filtered through sand. Class 5th or 6th, you must have studied sand filtration, or what we call the sedimentation.
Sedimentation.
So this is simple sedimentation. Water gets filtered through sand, all the harmful elements stay back, and what you get is simple drinking, clean, potable water, which you can consume on daily basis. We have only one person in history who drank Ganga water directly throughout his life, and he did not drink anything else since he came to India. That was Emperor Akbar. Wherever Akbar went, even when he was ruling from Lahore, Ganga water was taken from wherever the nearest spot, Ghat of Ganga is, to Lahore, because he would only drink Ganga water. That was Akbar. So
That's
I
a
would
lovely fact.
you can go through it on YouTube.
Yeah, we can go on. Right, right.
And
So there's
also, if anybody has any question left that we have not been able to answer, maybe Avanjo, they can send it to you. You can send me those questions and I'll reply, you know, via mail or chat, whatever is convenient.
sure, sure. In fact, we would wait for another session.
Anytime, anytime.
Right. Okay, so I hope we are towards the end. It's almost ending. So we can say bye-bye to sir now. It has been a lovely session, sir. Thank you so much for being here and guiding us, enlightening us about
Thank you.
history. I believe that students must have taken a lot from the session, and they must change their perspective looking at their history books. They must not keep it away. Let me keep it inside the cupboard and packet. They'll definitely open up and read it with new perspectives. I believe they will do that. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Welcome.
So everybody's saying thank you, and
Thank
it
you,
was a
everyone.
great.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you, all of you. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.